Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. We have two incredible guests today. Marcus East is a technologist. He's held roles like CTO, CIO, Chief Product Officer, and is a venture capital investor and holds a variety of board seats. And Adam Maddock is a co-founder and CEO of Venture Forge, a Marine, and a practicing Stoic. And they first worked together at T-Mobile when Adam was the Chief of Staff and Marcus was his principal. But welcome both of you to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Emily.
So Marcus, I know it's been a few years, but can you recall what the team structure looked like at T-Mobile and how you situated everyone, including how you fit in the chief of staff role?
Absolutely, yes. So the first thing to say is that for me, the chief of staff is really a critical role as part of a leadership team. And so in my mind, whilst I had a number of direct reports who were all VPs or SVPs, so senior execs who ran large teams, the chief of staff was really there to act as a force multiplier, not only to help me do a better job of the things that I was doing, but also to coordinate across that wider team. And in this specific example, where we're talking about Adam, clearly his leadership expertise and bringing that fantastic background, being a veteran of the US Marine Corps, he really helped to organize that team. And so it varies. Many people have different approaches to how a chief of staff works. But for me, it is very much that almost like a deputy who is there to act as a force multiplier, help the rest of the team to maximize its impact and output, whilst at the same time having some special responsibilities. And so I had a bunch of functional reports who were doing things like engineering and design and operations, where the chief of staff role fitted in was really making sure that there was coordination across all of those different teams, and also driving, because we had a very large team with thousands of people, communications. And the final thing I will say, because I could talk about this for hours, is also acting as the eyes and ears on the ground and helping me as the executive to understand what was happening across quite a large organization. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour of chief of staff from my perspective.
Thank you. And if I have it right, you were the chief digital officer. Was that your role? Okay.
Correct.
So you had a very large organization. And I'm curious, did T-Mobile, I know there's multiple chiefs of staff at T-Mobile. Was there a blueprint or any guidelines for how to utilize this role, or was it group by group?
So yes, there were guidelines. It's fair to say that there were JDs that were sort of coordinated across the organization, certainly during the time that I was there. And there was a chief of staff organization that was kind of led by the CEO's chief of staff. So there was some pretty good coordination. However, that didn't necessarily mean that all executives use their chiefs of staff in the same way, or that all chiefs of staff were equal. And I do think that it's such a critical role. And I think the skills to be a good chief of staff are very specialized. And so you can have a blueprint, you can have a framework, but that doesn't always mean that it's easy to execute against it.
Yeah, and it seems like you kind of used Adam. And Adam, I'll talk to you just like, not like you're right here. I'll talk to you in a second directly. But Marcus, it seemed like you used Adam as overarching and seeing across department lines. You had your functional groups, but someone to connect the dots and bring that all together to be your proxy eyes and ears where you just couldn't be all of the time. Did you see Adam as another member of your executive team? Was that kind of a consigliere advisor role? How did you view him in terms of the team structure?
Yeah, I think a consigliere advisor role is a good way to think of it, in that on the one hand, to be effective, I don't think the chief of staff can be absolutely burdened and overwhelmed with the same sort of day-to-day operational responsibilities as other members of that executive team.
Yeah.
But they have to be senior enough that they have credibility and are seen as a peer of those people. And Adam did that very well, and therefore created a lot of value, not only for me, but for the whole organization.
And what would you say the main benefit of having a chief of staff was. If you were talking to another executive thinking about bringing on this type of role, what would you say? Here's the main thing I got out of having a chief of staff.
Yeah, the main benefit really is that force multiplier. I believe that as an executive, you are able to have more of an impact, to be more connected and to deliver more value by having a chief of staff that is helping you to execute the vision. And another way of thinking about it is that as an executive, you typically have to context switch from being very strategic. You maybe spend half of your time in board meetings thinking about the strategy of the company as well as the strategy of your organization. And then half of your time doing the sort of more tactical day-to-day things, operational things. And it can be very hard to bridge those things purely from a time perspective. And the chief of staff allows that to happen. They are always looking for that connection between the strategic and the day-to-day operational. And without a chief of staff, my view is that it's very, very difficult to be a successful executive.
Mm. All right. So, Adam, I will stop talking about you like you're not here. Thank you for
There.
being on. So, I'm always curious, people with a military background, how did being a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, affect your leadership style, your relationships and interactions with people in general, but in the civilian sector, in the corporate world?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, yeah, and I agree with Marcus. This is a topic we could talk about for a while, and it's very interesting the dynamics inside a corporate environment. For me, this was my first corporate experience. I was in the Marine Corps for almost 8 years, and then came out of that experience, went and got my MBA, and then jumped right into corporate America. And so it was a quite a big difference, but also there was a lot of things that were similar. So it's not as massive as a jump as a lot of times it can seem. And I think a lot of that comes from the core essence of things you learn as a Marine, as a Marine Corps officer. And one of those which directly apply, to the chief of staff role is, Marcus touched on it. There's this uh, balance between being strategic thinking and tactical execution that you have to shift between a lot as a chief of staff. You have to be able to sit, in high level meetings, understand um, conceptually what's going on throughout the organization. And just in, Marcus's organization, you have design, experience, the software development, engineering, and then you had all of the cultural pieces that go into that, right? And so, for me, one of the things that I learned most poignantly about being a Marine is that there is a massive amount of delegation down to the lowest levels of the organization. Um, in the Marine Corps, we call them our junior leaders. Our enlisted staff um, carry out most, if not all, of the work that happens, right? Like the actual execution of the work. And I would say that's very similar to um, corporate America, in particular, where we were at T-Mobile. However, like that only works if you are allowed that delegation of authority, right? And so this
Mm.
is where I struggled with corporate America. T-Mobile is a big corporation, lots of layers, layers upon layers, um, and within our organization, really putting a premium on understanding. And Marcus heard this from me a lot, like commander's intent or the why
Yeah.
or purpose, right? And so if people understand the purpose, people understand the why we are doing the things that we're doing, it allows you throughout the day to make hundreds of micro decisions on your own without seeking approval, because you know that the intent of this decision that I'm making ladders up to my boss's, my leader's intent, which ladders to his or her leader's intent, right? And so to me, that was, coming out of the Marine Corps, I was uh, blessed with that education of growing up as a young adult in an organization which demanded that leaders push down uh, decision making authority to the lowest levels, because that's how the operation was set up, right? That's how the organization ran. That's how the organization, succeeded or failed, was based on that lines of delegation authority. And so, coming into corporate America, coming into a position where Marcus gave me a ton of autonomy to build this role, pushed very hard for an organization that um, communicated what the purpose of the organization was, what we were doing, our mission, which then, you know, let Marcus's direct reports lead their teams with a certain amount of autonomy, knowing that they were or leading up to and laddering up to Marcus's vision. And that, you know, in an
Right.
ideal world, trickles all the way down to the lowest levels of organization. So that was my biggest thing coming out of the Marines, because that's ingrained in you on day one of officer boot
Yep.
camp, is doing that. And so that's permeated for sure.
It's funny, I was talking to a US Marine Colonel Chief of Staff, so a Chief of Staff in the Marines, and he mentioned commander's intent as well. And he also said, Emily, look, it's people are people wherever you go. It's relationships. It's being, and
Yeah.
he was a diplomatic kind of embassy attaché, so all around the world. And then he moved to corporate where he was dealing with a global organization. So being able to talk to lots of different kinds of people and really understanding what they're saying, what they're not saying, what they want, what they care about. And he said that was a pretty much a direct transfer. So it's interesting that you mentioned commander's
Totally.
intent as well, and also some of those other concepts that move over. You were also a social aide to the president and first lady. So I'm wondering, you know, what was that experience in the Marines? What was that like? What are some insights from that experience?
Yeah, that one certainly gets all the press for sure. Marcus loves to talk about that as well, and it was an incredible experience, right? Like I had just come back from combat deployments in Afghanistan in my first sort of 4-year contract, and then re-upped, and then found myself at the Marine Barracks Washington in D.C., which part of that duty was as the social aide to President Obama and First Lady Michelle. So it was very much a ceremonial post. A lot of the work was done prior to the events, and during the events, I was a public-facing figure for representing the Marine Corps and also our government with foreign heads of state, dignitaries, any sort of event that the president or first lady would host at the White House. And yeah, it was an amazing experience, not only from a personally, but just being able to represent the organization that I loved, the country that I loved, and to see how peek behind the curtain really of how the most powerful person in the world operates when the cameras aren't on, and
Right.
just to understand the dynamics of that were fascinating.
So at like a state dinner, what would you be doing? Is that a function you'd be attending?
Yeah, we did quite a few state dinners, and
Oh,
so
wow.
each social aid, or each branch of the armed forces has social aides that fill that role, and so there's every branch of the service is represented in those, and we do a lot of, prior to the event, working with the social staff, working with the Secret Service, working with the all of the layers of logistics that are happening there, um, understanding the cadence of events that are happening down to really the minute, for the president's schedules down to the minute. It's insane. And then during the event, executing whatever plans had there, a lot of photo lines with the president. Um, Everyone wants a piece of the president's time, so you're really managing that flow of people, and it can get pretty hectic there, as you can imagine. But just a fascinating experience.
Wow, that's a unique experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were Marine, you were social aide, and then you moved to T-Mobile. I'm wondering, do you remember when you first heard of Marcus or met Marcus and your first impressions? What was that like?
Yeah, I was told, from my very early upbringing to be wary of people with British accents. That was ingrained in us. I think from 1776 onward. But no, as we all are, we're all mesmerized by the accent. It's hard, we can't get away from it. But I remember uh, when it was really a graduation day for T-Mobile when Marcus was brought on board, because we were very much um, the digital team was very much a subgroup of the company, right? And so
Wow.
it was really seen as big moves for T-Mobile, really graduating, bringing on our first chief digital officer, which was Marcus, um, and the background that he had. And so right away, because I was not in a formal chief of staff role at that time, I was in a strategy role on the team, working for which was soon to be one of Marcus's direct reports, and doing a little bit of chief of staff work off the side of my desk for the VP that was running the team at the moment. And so bringing Marcus on board, seeing his credentials, seeing what he had done, I watched all of his speeches and stuff online. I was like, I'm looking forward to meet this guy, um, because if I'm going to go for a chief of staff role, assuming that he has one, to me it was as much interviewing him as he was going to be interviewing me,
Right.
because this role only works right if there's a strong
Two
relationship
ways.
between the
Yeah.
executive and the chief of staff. It can't just be one way, otherwise it's a struggle, and the job is hard, and it's a great job, but it's not worth it if it's that hard, if it's a struggle one way or the other. And so to me, like, I poured through his material, and then got to meet him a few times as we went through the process. But I will say it was a great fit. I've enjoyed working with Marcus so much so that I still am. So that was my first impression, and my mindset there.
And then did you say you applied for the role, or did you kinda get tapped on the shoulder for it? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I appreciate that about Marcus. Like, he made it an open call. Like, I had been working pseudo in the role that I was in with Marcus, the same kind of like pseudo chief of staff, kind of getting him integrated into the team and the company. Then he had an open um, uh, hiring process, and went through a whole loop with HR and other his direct reports.
Okay. Okay.
So that was important for me to have that happen, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just while the relationship between the executive and the chief of staff is important. And what I tell chiefs of staff all the time is, if you're going through the interview process, ask to meet with or interview with their direct reports as well. Not only will that
Yes.
make you look really good, but that relationship needs to be strong from day one, or you need to be building a relationship starting day one with his or her direct reports to make that job work well.
Mm. And then once you guys were paired together as principal and chief of staff, do you remember, an initiative or a challenge that you worked together on and found a good path forward together on?
Yeah, and so I think what Marcus brought to the table was a lot, that we didn't have previously. Certainly, was a lot of focus and rigor on the metrics that matter, and charting your progress. And I think it sounds so simple, and like, why didn't we have that before? But like, really, pushing the organization, the broader T-Mobile, to adopt some rigor around our goal setting process and our OKRs, and adopting a ton of rigor about being open and honest with the communication. Um, I think you meet anyone at T-Mobile that got to interact with Marcus, and he very well may be the most open and transparent executive to ever
Hmm.
be in corporate America. Like, it was such a shock to
It's quite the
uh,
mantle, Marcus. Well done.
oh, seriously, like, experience as someone who had open office hours, open Q&As, open ask me anythings, open town halls that were not just once a quarter, right? We did this like every other week. We were doing things where people could sit in
Wow.
front of Marcus and talk, and they were recorded. They were off the books, right? It was just a chance for um, Marcus to get in front of the staff, because if there's one thing that happens as you go up in the organization, this was also ingrained from Marine Corps time, right? Is that you get further away from those that are actually doing the. It's not on
Yeah.
purpose. It's just what happens, right? And so engineering those moments where you can get in front of people, the staff, those that are doing the work, is so valuable, not only for the staff, but in this case for Marcus as well, and for his staff to hear how people are feeling and answering questions. And it was a great blueprint for others, because you saw his staff then doing these things that he was doing, right? And
Mm.
so to me, that was such a good introduction of how to join a company and join a team to get people on board, is to do those things of you know kissing babies, and getting in front of people, and
Yeah.
really communicating who you are and what you want the team to be, the vision for the future.
I think there's saying that I'm transparent and I have an open door policy, and then there's actually doing it, which can be two very different things. So it sounds like Marcus hit
Definitely.
the mark on both. So, Marcus,
Mm.
another word that gets bandied about is trust. And we often hear you have to have trust between a principal and a chief of staff. And I'm in 100% agreement with that. And then the next question is how? So, with Adam, how did you? Maybe it just happened over the course of time, but how did you build that trust where this person has my back? I can be fully transparent with him. I can toss him anything I need to over the fence and it gets done. How did you build that part of it up?
That's a great question, Emily. I think that at some level it comes down to the human chemistry between two people. And so I will tell you that when I first met Adam, it was entirely on Zoom, on video conferencing. And I found it very hard to really understand what was going through his mind. He's a low reactor when it comes to video conferencing. And so in some of those conversations, it was kind of hard to gauge exactly sort of what was happening. And this was during COVID because, this was early 2021. However, when we then got together in person, there are a couple of things that really stood out to me. One is that Adam demonstrates in everything that he does integrity. Now, that is very rare in corporate America, I have to tell you. And so somebody who does what they say they're going to do and will always do the right thing even when nobody's looking is a rare thing. And these are values that I hold dearly. And so I could see those immediately in Adam, not only from how he behaved, but also how other people talked about him, the respect that others had for him. And so that allowed me to have that foundation of trust. But then there was also, I think, the natural process of spending time working together, tackling some challenges, working on things like the digital dashboard that I talked about, the metrics that matter, seeing that he was someone who would very quickly understand the mission and then organize and mobilize without a huge amount of oversight to then go away and execute was very, very powerful and led to a lot of trust. And then the other thing I think that led to trust was success. And I always say this when people ask me about, hey, how do you build great teams and, what are the tricks of the trade? Actually, the best way to build a great team and great relationships is through success, because it's through winning that I believe that people develop the strongest bonds and relationships. Yes, you might learn a lot from losing, but you're going to build the bonds from winning. And, those early days when we were making that pivot from what we used to joke about as little digital that was kind of in the corner. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story, actually. So one of the first town halls that we organized, I remember one of the questions that came in from the audience was about the organizations, the company's commitment to digital. And this person was pretty frustrated and basically said, hey, this company doesn't take digital seriously. The leaders don't understand it. Digital is never really going to be a thing here. And I said, and this was early 2021, no, I believe that the fact that I've been hired and that we're bringing together so many different parts of the company to form this new big digital team, I believe that's a testament to the fact that we are serious about digital. And now looking back, after nearly 3 years, we went from people thinking that digital was a little thing in the corner that wasn't taken seriously by the leadership to a place where the company's actual strategy is to be digital first. The work that myself and Adam and the rest of our team did led to that point where the CEO of the company goes out and talks about wanting to be digital first. Very different from where we were 3 years ago. And so the connections that the people working on that made are indelible. These are connections that in my opinion will last a lifetime.
And when you're in the, forging that fire where you have to create something and build it in a very short amount of time, I think you do build those bonds. So thank you for that. And I wanted to ask about trust because it's not everyone you turn around, look at and say, hey, do you want to start a company together? Because that's a pretty close, meaningful relationship. You're often spending more time with that person or those people than your own family. So you two are co-founders of Venture Forge. So I want to definitely get into that. How did that come about? What is Venture Forge? Why did you create this company? Give us a snapshot of that, please.
Yeah, of course. So over the last decade, whilst obviously I've been an executive and have had very demanding jobs, one of the areas in which I've derived the most joy is investing and also advising founders and helping them to be successful with their companies. And so I've also been fortunate in that some of the companies that I've been an advisor to or a director of have done very well. One of them was sold for over $1 billion in 2023. And so what I realized as I was leaving T-Mobile was that because I get so much joy from doing that, and because I do believe that entrepreneurship is the engine of this economy here in the United States, I wanted to do something that would help people to realize their entrepreneurial dreams, and that I believe the entrepreneurial spirit exists in all people from all walks of life, but not everybody has equal access to the opportunities. So what was funny is that whilst I was thinking about this and whilst I was developing ideas and thoughts around, how could you bring this to life? Adam was actually on a road trip in Europe and was pretty much uncontactable. But I was sort of drip feeding to him little snippets of the things that I was thinking and things that I was working on. He would every once in a while come back with a whole bunch of ideas and thoughts. And so amazingly, we had this period where we were driving towards a vision where we were on different continents and where we were in different time zones. But the alignment around wanting to do something that had a positive impact on the world, whilst at the same time having the potential to be a good wealth creator for the people involved in it, was a very compelling mission. And as soon as Adam got back from his road trip, he hit the ground running, and very quickly got to the point where he really became the driving force behind not only the vision, but also the operations of what is now Venture Forge.
Oh, interesting. So, what are your roles in Venture Forge today? How do you split those responsibilities?
Yeah, so Adam is the CEO, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about that. And I am the chairman. And it's
Chairman. Okay.
interesting because, in a way, there are parallels between the chairman and CEO role and the
Mm,
principal and chief of staff
yep.
role. And what I see is, as Adam has really grown in the last few months into this CEO role, and become a very strong, very directional leader in a corporate setting or in a business setting. What's fascinating is that me as chairman, I have to focus on the strategic piece and then have to think about how I can allow Adam the space to be able to actually go and execute, even though the initial ideas and some of the initial thinking, you could say, came out of my head. But now it is a joint mission, a joint vision, and one where Adam is in the driving seat. And my job is to provide support and oversight, and to make sure that we achieve together that mission.
Yes. And I appreciate the mission and vision of Venture Forge. What makes your company different than all the others out there? What types of things differentiate that in the market?
Adam, you want to take that on?
Absolutely. So, we started this journey back last fall, like Marcus said. It was around September, late August, September of, we envision a world where wealth creation is democratized for all founders. Because we believe in capitalism. We believe in, venture capital works. It is a wealth generating machine. Some of the greatest social inventions, technical inventions ever made have come from, early seed founders getting the funding and support and access to build their products. Like we see it all the time, right? But what we've found, and as we've dug into the data, as we've looked at, our own experiences, that not everyone has that same access to those things. Some people get
Yeah.
lucky. Some people have great networks. Some people, put in the work and go to school and, take a lot of risks and it happens. But by and large, there is a from the data shows there is an underserved population in this group, whether that's military veterans, whether that's female founders, people of color, financially disadvantaged, people from all over this country, really the world, struggle with that access to funding, support, and resources to make it happen. So, you know, fundamentally, we believe in a world that wealth creation is democratized, and we do that through our mission of enabling founders to forge their ideas into impact. And so, that is our rallying cry. That's our mission: forging ideas and impact. And naturally, Venture Forge came out of that. So it is a movement that is allowing and will democratize wealth creation for all founders, and to ensure that this next generation coming up is able to access resources, support, and funding to see their products and experiences become a reality and change the world.
Well, first of all, Venture Forge is a great, strong name. So well done, whoever came up with that. And then, who specifically, like, what type of person or company or entity are you looking to have come to you? What would be kind of your ideal person you're suited to serve?
Yeah, and it's a great question and something uh, we talk about a lot, right? And because it's an interesting concept. What we're doing is our mission is our mission is to have founders forge their ideas and impact, and we do that through three programs that we have in place right now. And the first is a digital community for founders, right? So all founders experience or can experience, you know, being a founder is lonely. I'm experiencing it, right now. It's
Yes.
hard. It can be lonely. It's hard. Emily, I'm sure you experience as well
Yep.
as you've been figuring out, how to podcast, how to create a movement of yourself as an author, as a podcaster, as an educator. It can be incredibly disheartening and lonely at times. And so we wanted to create a community of founders that can come together. You can you can lean on each other. You can ask questions. You can find potential co-founders if you're not a very technical person and you need someone to come on this journey with you. You can find them there. You can reach out to subject matter experts. You can access media and videos. It's just a place to be a founder. That's, as Marcus calls it, low salt, right? From Reddit, but a place that's just that you can be you and ask the questions and get the information that you need. So that's for all founders, right? And like all founders need that at one important time in their journey. The second part of that is what we're calling Venture Starter, which is for us a brand new thing on the market, which we're really excited to get out there in the market. And I'm sure you're familiar with Kickstarter. That's probably
Yep.
the easiest concept for people to understand. And there's also a company out there called WeFunder, which does a very similar thing. And the difference between us and a Kickstarter is that we are focused on those individuals that we're calling funders that exist out there that believe in our mission, that believe in early stage startups' mission of achieving, that early stage momentum that a lot of founders struggle with from both a financial aspect, from a resource aspect, and a network aspect. They struggle with that. So here, funders can come on and shop a marketplace type aspect like Kickstarter is, and donate tax exempt donations to these founders that are building their venture, right? And so it allows them now to be connected with that company as they go through. They can, in later stages, they can choose to invest. They get updates from these companies. And then it allows those founders to get, what we're calling these micro grants of funding to inject into their company to not have to take out a high interest bank loan. Or in the case of a lot of our underserved founders, they don't have the network that we have or the resources that we have. So even a little small amount of capital allows them to get into the marketplace, right? And so that's huge. And then the third piece of that is the 12-week boot camp specifically for cohorts of underserved founders that really sets them up for success, that connects them with a network of advisors and resources to really bring their product from an idea stage, ensure this concept of product market fit exists with their product and their end user, and to get their first 100 customers, right? And so it's really engaging our network on these founders and their ventures to really see them start to get that traction, or then they can go to the venture capitalists and ask for investment, where they can go to top accelerators and get in to those programs. So those three things combined is what makes us different. And I think that above all, what makes us different is that we are a foundation, right? We don't have any other motivations for profit other than seeing founders succeed. And that is a huge difference with a lot of the products that are in the market right now that founders can go after. They say they're founder first. They have good intentions, no doubt. I'm not questioning their intentions, but they require you to give up part of your company, right? Which for a founder who you're chasing your dream, that can be a big ask. It's a big risk to give up part of your company. And so we don't ask anything of founders. We ask for commitment. We ask for, being involved and being focused and wanting to see you to bring your vision to life, because that's what we're here for as well.
So the three elements, if I heard it right, the first one is a place where founders can go for a community, for resources. Hey, it's lonely at the top. Let me just connect with people who are in the same boat. I'm not alone, and any tactical pieces I need there. The second piece was a platform, it seems like, for funders who want to say, okay, I can look through a portfolio or profiles of different companies and founders and what they're doing. And I want to support this one. I'm passionate about that. I see that they're very organized and have a game plan. Let me support that one financially. And then the third piece sounds like a more structured boot camp, like a series or a sequence of these classes or online modules to go from product ideation to product launch to your first 100 customers. Is that what I heard?
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
beautiful. That's amazing. Okay, and what stage are you guys in with this? Is this, I guess you mentioned last September, so still fairly nascent, or are things starting to launch?
Yeah, so we are making great progress. Like looking at our timeline, I was just reviewing our timeline this morning. The community is launching early in August, which is great. We've been working with the dev team, getting that all set up right now. And we're in the process of building the venture starter platform, which should be done beginning of Q4 is the latest with that. And that will launch at the same time as our bootcamp. So it's a Q4 launch is right around the corner. And so we
Okay.
are in, build mode. We are in very soon. We're going to be in hiring mode, which is exciting, and really, full on marketing, getting the word out there, and getting people excited about this.
What does your next hire look like? What are you looking for now?
Yeah, this is a great question because Marcus and I we talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
We look at, I've certainly stack ranked what I think is, critical hires for us next. And I think before even talking about what that hire is, right? It's me, it's like who that hire is, and not necessarily a specific person, but the type of person that we
Yeah.
want to be a part of this. Like I think Marcus and I both talk about this with a lot of passion, right? And so I think number one, you want someone that believes in the vision like you do, is in the mission, was willing to put in, the type of hours and effort that it takes to get something new off the ground. But not only that, a not for profit off the ground, which is a unique skill set as I'm learning very very viscerally. Um, and so to me, that's the biggest thing. I mean, like Marcus has an incredible network of people who have been also have networks of people. Um, and so do there's other two other board members as well, who have just a fantastic career, fantastic network. So it's been fun to reach out to all of our networks and see the high level of interest that we're getting on there. Um, Specifically, when you look at functions that we're looking for, there is running an online community, a digital community is time
Right.
consuming and challenging. And that's like a brand new skill set that I'm learning. Marcus has a lot of experience building communities, and is involved with a number of them for long periods of time. I'm very new to communities. And so looking at a community manager that really understands and gets how to build community, understands how to build engagement and provide high quality resources and materials to people. Otherwise, you know, no one's going to show up, and if they do, they won't come back. So I think that's really important, and then really focusing heavily on um, uh, from a storytelling aspect, a brand and storytelling aspect, a marketing aspect for this movement that we're creating. Because at the end of the day, what drives people to be a part of a movement is the belief in the end goal, the end vision, right? We talk about commander's intent again here, right? So it's that belief in the commander's intent, that belief in I want to donate my time, money, resources to this requires, a very high level, a high degree of storytelling and ability to convey that vision to someone who either doesn't know about it or, maybe apprehensive at first. And you got to overcome some significant
Yeah.
hesitancy. So those are the two things I'm looking at up front.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of launching a product is to create that narrative where you can tell the story to a lots of different constituents and stakeholders, depending on where they're coming at it from, and having that be a compelling, relevant story to them. So maybe I don't know if that's in your boot camp, but that's what I
Yeah.
see early stage entrepreneurs, I mean, they know it, but they have to package it in such a way that other people can easily understand it. I know some people who have been deep in the engineering and coding of this product, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, you can't talk at that level. You've got to bring it up here and tell the
Mm,
story. And they're like, oh, okay. So
mm,
I think that's an important piece too. Yeah.
Yeah,
spot on.
absolutely. And Emily, if I may, just to build on what Adam was saying, going back to your question about the first hire, one of the things that I've seen over the last decade, and I'm an angel investor as well as a limited partner. So I actually one of those people that funds the venture capital funds like
Yep.
Greylock, for example. And what's been interesting for me is realizing that as an organization grows, those first few hires, not only do they need to bring specific skills and competencies, but they will define the culture of that organization potentially for the next couple of decades. And so one of the things that's very important to me personally is as we think about the people that Adam we're bringing on board, we want to make sure that they will add something to the culture as well. And it this gets you thinking about, cultural fit versus cultural add, in that my belief is that in a small growing organization, getting the right hires who not only bring the skills, but also bring something that's going to enhance the culture is critical. And I see that for some of the companies that I maybe invested in, 7, 8, 10 years ago that are doing really, really well now. Yes, they had a great product and they achieved product market fit, and all of that was very, very positive. But they also had leaders that were very intentional about the sort of organization they wanted to create. And, we mentioned integrity earlier. I will tell you that one of the organizations that I'm on the board of, the leaders of that organization have demonstrated integrity from day one. And that has led to some real challenges for them. But the fact that they've done that is one of the reasons that right now they're being so successful. And so that's what, as Adam and I work together on Venture Forward, that's one of the things that I'm excited to consider as well.
I think that's so important because in the startup phase, the hires you make can make or break that company. I mean, I've been in an 11-person startup and everyone knows everything, and the environment you come to work every day is a big piece of it. And yeah, I've worked for a number of companies that were private equity backed, so a little bit further down the life cycle, but um yes, certainly there's been leadership transplants, we'll say, in terms of, hey, let's turn this culture around. And that can be important as well. I'm just curious. So I was speaking to a colleague, and she's kind of in the VC world and the early stage world, and she's passionate about helping female minority founders. And her original idea was to create a VC firm that helped that audience and that group. But what she found was she could get the first round, Series A, but then they would be less likely to get the second round of funding because people thought they got the first round just because of that. So then she was like, okay, let me rethink this and maybe come up with a consortium of people who are trying to help different people. So I was just wondering, kind of toss that out and see what thoughts are, if you could help someone like that, how would that go?
Yeah, very interesting. Adam, you want to go first on that?
It's unsurprising to hear that because we hear the same things. I've been talking to a lot of my Marine Corps peers and just veterans in general, because that to me that's a huge
Yeah.
cohort that could leave the military, and a lot of the qualities that make you successful in the military translate pretty directly to how if you're successful as an entrepreneur. Like I think veterans have like a 6 or 7x potential to be more successful entrepreneur than not veterans, which I think it was the latest stat, which is fascinating to me because not a lot of veterans go into to be in entrepreneurship. So that's one of our target audiences for sure. And so I was talking to two of my friends who have left the Marine Corps, become successful entrepreneurs, sold a company, and was asking them about like, would you join a program like this? And there's definitely hesitancy to exactly what you just said. Like, I don't want people to think I just got selected because of
Oh, yeah.
fill in the
Yep.
demographic, and that is a very real and visceral challenge that um, whether it's actual or not, it's real to the person, right? And so, and I think you've just described a scenario where it actually is it's real from a funding aspect as well. And for us, that's something that we talk about often because we don't want it to be, we say underserved, and part of our job is to define what that means, because that's a shifting target, right? The reality is the data shows there is underserved populations. That could be financially disadvantaged. It could be uh, military veterans. It could be female women of color right now. Those will always be shifting. And so it's on us to continue to look at the data.
How do you overcome that? Sorry to jump in, like,
Yeah, yeah,
how do
please.
you overcome that? Because my instinct is like, well, then you help, like, you add, you give them
Yeah.
opportunities to do their thing. I mean, how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think you look at it's part of the job for the team and part of the job for the founder is to really convey, you talk about storytelling, right? Is to convey the merits of the work,
Mm,
the company, demonstrate that the company is what it says it is, not, it's not a handout. It's not a, it is a charity, but it's not a charity. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not, it is, incumbent on the founders and the teams that's supporting the founders to demonstrate that there is, a substantial degree of merit and worth behind the company. And that's part of the challenge, and it's a welcome challenge for sure.
I think a big part of it is storytelling and being able to, when you get called, to be able to step up and swing away at that. But the other piece is you have to have that at bat, so to speak. You have to
Mm.
have that opportunity. If you can have the greatest company and be the greatest founder and tell the greatest story, but if you don't have any opportunities, I mean, you're just out of luck in that sense. So I think maybe it is companies like Venture Forge who are saying, okay, we will give you that opportunity. You have to step up into that and perform by merit, but we can connect you with the right people for those opportunities.
Great point, Emily. What's interesting for me is this idea that our vision, this vision of democratized wealth creation, really means that we want everybody who feels that entrepreneurial spark, and we know that that exists in all walks of life, should have, as you described it, opportunities. And so where that leads to us threading the needle is that, from my perspective, that means that today there may be an underserved community that needs some additional help. Tomorrow that might be a different underserved community.
Yeah.
And the challenge that I have with some of the VC funds, for example, that have set themselves up specifically for a very, very tightly defined demographic, is that over time, that will change. And also, that's an exclusive approach at some level. And it might sound counterintuitive, but bear with me, because we want everybody to be able to be involved in the early stage ecosystem. And so, I'm excited to see white male founders as well as female founders. It's just that some of the programs that we're developing are going to address a specific gap that we see right now. And that may be for veterans or for female founders, for example. It doesn't mean that we exclude from that the opportunity to work with others. And so that's why I think it's very important that the community that we have and that we are building could potentially have a much larger cohort of people in it than will be eligible for some of the programs that we run. And we're super comfortable with that because we want everybody to get value from the work that we do. The other thing I would say is that many organizations have gone straight to the idea of let's set up a fund because we need to give these people money. Giving founders money is not the only way and potentially not the best way to support them. And this may also sound counterintuitive in that some of the most successful companies that I've been involved with actually haven't had a huge amount of funding relative to their peers. But what they did have was fantastic sets of advisors. They had a really strong network of people who were introducing them to potential clients. They built a really, really strong culture that was sustainable. And over a period of 10 years, you kind of bet on those companies more than the companies that just went out there and raised a lot of money. And so one of the concepts that we talk about a lot at Venture Forge is this idea of investment ready, in that we believe that by making an underserved founder investment ready, that's how you then unlock the potential for them. And the best thing for them is to be able to raise money from traditional sources. If we can take a founder from an underserved demographic and we can make them investment ready, and we can allow them to get that bank loan, or we can allow them to get money from that super angel, or we can allow them to get money from a mainstream VC, then they're set. And to the point that you were making earlier, when people then look back at their series, at their seed rounding or their series A and say, oh, they raised money from big Silicon Valley VC company X, it's going to allow them to be more successful in the long run versus just giving them some money now from a special fund that potentially actually makes it harder for them later on. So this is a complicated area, and it's a complex problem, and people are going to come at it from many, many different ways. But we think we found a way to thread that needle and get to the people that really need the help.
That makes sense to me. You're prepping them to be able to get the traditional sources of funding. That makes a ton of sense to me. And just to piggyback on something you said, if someone is listening and they say, "Look, I don't have the funds right now, but I would love to mentor, or I do have this
Mhm.
specialty," is that kind of like a bucket two item where you can go on that platform and
Yes.
say, "Hey, I can raise my hand for an advisory board seat or whatnot."
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's really, really valuable. I maybe in another podcast can talk about how it's so critical to founders to find the right advisors and supporters. And unfortunately, I've seen many founders who've gone out of the gate really hard, and they've got a bunch of advisors, on their cap table who don't do very much and maybe don't bring the kind of value. Um, I've been an angel for a long time. I've been an advisor for a long time. You need to be there at 2 o'clock in the morning when the founder is having an emotional crisis
Yeah.
and isn't sure what to do and wants to just throw everything up, or feels that one of the co-founders is out to get them and that, bad things are happening, or one of the other investors is doing something that they don't understand. And the organizations and founders that don't have access to that kind of support will find it much harder to navigate these difficult, choppy, challenging waters. And so finding the right type of advisor is essential. And that's one of the core things that we want to do with Venture Forge. If every founder that comes into Venture Forge can, through the programs that we put in place, find one or two advisors that can be force multipliers for them, then we'll be a long way towards achieving our vision.
Beautiful. I love everything that you two are doing. I'm in huge support. If someone wants to reach out to one of you or learn more about Venture Forge, where is the best place to go?
Yeah, so right now we have a holding page up that will soon go live here in the next month or so. But ventureforge.org, and feel free to reach out directly to me, Adam at ventureforge.org, or Marcus at ventureforge.org.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
happy
We
to
will
hear
have
from anybody who wants to help.
Yeah,
beautiful. We'll
absolutely.
have those links and your emails in the show notes as well. But Marcus, Adam, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks,
Enjoyed
Emily.
it.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.